And just like that, we're into it for a matinee live stream here on Longbox Punk. That's me. I'm Chris. I'm the punk, and I am joined today by Kylar, my dude. Thanks for hanging out with me on a Sunday talking comics and just having a general good time, as I know we're going to.
Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you having me on. It's been a good day so far. Hope this be a good little conversation. I'm excited to talk about Song Survives. I haven't really talked about it or really done much for it, so it's kind of just snuck up on me. So yeah, I'm excited to. I heard you just in the pregame. You just hearing someone else say it, was like, oh wow, that's my book. Like I haven't done a Kickstarter or anything like that in a while. I haven't put out a new book in a while, so like it was just weird to be like, oh yeah, no, that's the thing I did.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
And I finished it a while ago, so like it's
okay.
it's kind of been out of my mind, and then now it's like, okay, no, I got to start thinking about that again.
Yeah. So we'll definitely get the promotional hamster back on the wheel for you here.
Yeah.
But before we get into The Song Survives, we're going to get into a whole lot of stuff. I've got some fun notes that I've got written down that I'm eager to talk to you about. But first, it's a comic podcast. So we got to start with, like, what's your origin story? How did you get into comics and how did you start creating in the first place?
I always knew like I wanted to be a creator of some kind. Like I just always knew that was the what I wanted to do. Like I know like in middle school I was one of those people, like me and my friends would like go make movies and stuff like that, and so that was kind of what I thought I wanted to do for a while. And then I got into comics in 2011 with the New 52. Okay. I know that gets a lot of hate, but for me that was my first comics. Like I'd read comics before, but that was the first time like I read a book and was like, oh no, this is like something more. For me, it was Francis Manapul and Brian Buccioletto on The Flash.
Okay.
And that was the thing. I don't know. I think it's mostly Francis' art, but like, it's just, to me, it was like something so different, but like, it's still obviously very superhero inspired, but I don't know, something, I still can't tell you what it was, but something about it just was super interesting to me, just the way it was done and the art style, and the story was cool. And so that was the first thing like I pulled on a regular basis. I wasn't living in a place where we had comic shops, so I like got them very sporadically. And if I did, like I would come back to Oklahoma for the summers and like would catch up on whatever I'd missed and just collect them all. And I still have all 52 issues of that run, but yeah, that was the first thing that got me into comics. It made me want to make them. But I didn't actually start making comics until I think 2017 when I was in college. And I was in a bit of a depressive episode. And I kind of just had this, I don't know what it was, but I think at some point I'd seen someone talking about Francis Manapul's artwork, and we're like, I'm not a huge fan of that. And for me, that being the thing that got me into comics, I was like, what are you like? That doesn't make sense. How do you not like this? And then at the same time, I'm seeing people talk about artists that I personally will just completely write off a book just because they're on it, but they love them. And so I was like, okay, if there's someone out there for everybody, somebody's got somebody that'll appreciate their work, I'm going to make it. And so I just started with like, originally I wanted to make like, like most people, I had this whole idea for a huge expanded superhero universe. Yeah. But that quickly, I got about 8 like short comics out of that, 6, maybe more like 5 or 6, but I got a few short comics out of it, and I'd like to come back to it at some point. But I guess that's kind of my origin. And then ever since then, the big thing that kind of got me into actually like trying to start a brand was, I'm kind of going over everything right now. I'm sorry if I'm going through your questions. But, was in 2020 because I made an anthology called Pandemics and Panels, and I had never done an anthology before. I had never made one. I'd never been in one. At that point, I'd only printed one other comic, I think. I can't remember how the timeline lines up on that, but some point in there, I made my first comic terminal, but then I made an anthology called Pandemics and Panels. It was all about, it was like May of 2020. So it was like, we thought like, it was like, this is hard. Like I was doing the same thing everybody was doing, like these are hard times. Let's make something that's uplifting. And that's what I did. And I was pretty proud of it. And then since then I've done a couple other anthologies, done some other um, just single issues and things like that. And yeah, that brings us to here mostly. I mean, I've kind of been on and off making comics for for however many years that is. Um, it's just I took kind of a break last year just because crowdfunding just wasn't working out for me.
Yeah.
And, I just felt really stuck creatively. But hopefully this kind of turns things around, because I think it kind of was at least for me, was like a symbol of like my mindset kind of changing.
Mm.
Anyway, that's pretty much my whole comic story. Been a really, really brief. Sorry if that was a little long, but
No, not at all, man.
right.
So, okay, so there's a few things that I want to unpack. You mentioned that you did the anthologies. Did you, like the pandemics and panels, did you do all of the stories in that anthology, or did you like source other writers and creative teams and artists and stuff like that to be a part of that with you?
Yeah, I don't remember if I wrote or drew anything in that book.
Okay.
I don't think that I did. I have my external hard drives right here, but that would take too long for me to pull up. I don't think I have it on my computer anymore. But yeah, I don't think I did anything in that book at all. It was mostly just me wanting to jump into that, and I learned a lot on the fly just because I had no idea what I was doing. Like I said, I'd never even been a part of an anthology, so I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know, what was expected, things like that.
Yeah.
It was all unpaid. It wasn't printed. It was all digital. We donated the proceeds to feed the children, I think, which I still get spam emails from them all the time now.
Right.
But yeah, I that was the first time I'd done anything. The only exposure I'd had prior to that was a group called the Comic Jam. I don't know if you're familiar
Yep.
or heard of
Yep.
them. Yeah.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, so that was my only experience with like collaborative comics making at that
Okay.
point. And so I know that a lot of the people that I worked with on Pandemics and Panels came from there. And a lot of my collaborators and a lot of the things like I've collaborated on, I've met through that group. So that was a big thing. But that prior to that, that was all I had. And so I just jumped right into it and organized it. Like I said, I don't think I did any of it, but it was definitely a learning experience, just figuring out, how how the cycle works of making a comic and like the publishing of comic, not just making it. Cause like I said before, I had made comics,
Sure.
just put them out on my own website. So this was a big deal to like, I don't know, actually publish something and see that side of things was interesting for me.
Did you crowdfund that book at all, or was it
No,
purely digital?
it was purely digital. We just talked about it. I just went on a couple podcasts. I know one of them was Spoiler Country, which at the time was Casey Allen, who was part of the Comic Jam. He kind of heads up that whole thing, or at least at the time he did. Now he's got some help, thankfully. But because he was doing a lot there by himself for a while.
Yeah.
But now he's got some help, so that's good. Anyway, I know I went on his podcast. I don't think I did any others. I just was like, hey guys, let's just push this thing. So like I said, I had no idea. Yeah. I genuinely didn't know how to crowdfund. I didn't even think to crowdfund. I still was being very naive and was like, oh, this will like make a bunch of money. Like we'll sell thousands of dollars. Like, and we did, I think $150, $200, which I think for something being pay what you want during COVID, first thing I'd ever done, wasn't too bad. Like I'm not unhappy about it. And I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. But celebrate that win for sure.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of, I think at the time it definitely was a win, because like it kind of pushed me to do a lot of other projects and do like make more anthologies and things like that.
Yeah. So what specifically with that first one did you then apply? Because I know you've done a few anthologies. So like, how did you, do you learn as much each new project that you work on?
I mean, you definitely learn more with each one. I don't think I learned quite as much, just because I was starting at 0.
Sure. Yeah.
And, you know, there's obviously a big leap of learning, like, okay, how do you communicate with people? How do you, you know, organize, you know, pair individuals up? How do you, you know, handle communication between the two? Like, I know, like, I learned with that first one, I used Discord to
Okay.
help people contact each other and stuff like that, and use this Discord server. I did use that on my second one. And then ever since then, I haven't bothered, because I was like, it's too much work to make a server every time, and people don't use it, and some people don't even have Discord. So I was like, what's the point? So I've definitely learned a lot of lessons every time. I think it's more just, my big lesson every time has been just, I keep getting the same lesson, which is just, you think you've got it figured out and you don't, or like, you think you're like spreading the word enough. You got to spread it more. You've got to push more. You've got to promote it more. And I think I'm just continually learning the same lessons over and over again. And which is weird, considering I have had like successes and things, but I think I'm learning like what makes an anthology work versus what doesn't make an anthology work. I think that's been a big part, because when I did Comics from the Kitchen, that really worked really well. A lot of people liked that idea, and a lot of people were involved in it. A lot of people had, you know, families that were supporting it. And so that was a big deal. And then I tried my next anthology, and that bombed just because it was very generic. It was very just, you know, oh, we're doing a comics magazine, and it's just going to be single issues with short stories about, and they were mostly like science fiction or fantasy type things. And it was just like, there wasn't anything to grab people. And maybe I learned the wrong lesson from that. That's entirely possible. But because I think that similar projects have worked, but just for what I was doing, it just wasn't working. And so I'm kind of just learning what works, what doesn't. I don't think I could necessarily vocalize all those things and point out to you exactly, hey, this is it, and this is why. But I am kind of just getting a better feel for things every single time I've done something.
That's cool. And I love the like continual progress and continued learning, because on the Foreign Press Comics website, that like one of your taglines is always forward, and then forward always.
Yeah.
And you just like,
I saw that from Luke Cage.
Gave me the alley-oop of like, I love that sentiment of like, we always need to be pushing and learning and growing and progressing at like all of the things forward.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've had jobs where they're like, there's no such thing as a mistake. There's only learning opportunities.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, shut up. You know, but then it's like, now that I've matured a bit from those jobs, and it's like the message was right, but the delivery was terrible.
Yeah.
But now it's like, okay, well, I am learning a lot from things that I mess up. And even when I'm like, oh, I have a thing, like even with the show, it's like, how can I make things like another 5% better? And like all the time I'm over analyzing all of those things. So I love that that's like core to Foreign Press, is just the like always forward, always better, always learning, always implementing all of the things all the time. So you mentioned that the song Survives, you've had that done for like 2 years. What makes now the time to be releasing it?
I haven't had it for 2 years. I had the idea about a year ago.
Okay.
Or a year and a half ago. I think it was done I finished the whole thing probably in November, December. Okay. But I had the idea for quite a while, because originally it was part of the last anthology that I did. It was going to be, because the last thing I did was it was called Smash, and it was going to be 4 parts that were all like each issue told a different part of the story. Okay. And so I had this 4-part story that was going to be all about this fantasy-esque bard who travels the desert and ends up getting involved in this commotion in a small town. And but that was meant to come out like about a year ago this time. So the first issue was, and so I had this idea prior to that. But I knew that I wanted to do something else that was just me. It wasn't anyone else. It
Yeah.
wasn't an anthology. I didn't have anyone else relying on me because I have other things, you know, in the pipeline that have collaborators, and I just knew that I've been so discouraged by crowdfunding last year that I just kind of gave up for a while on everything. I don't mean everything. Like I was going to work and I was still like drawing and stuff on the side. Like I started like doing daily not daily necessarily, but filling up sketchbooks. Like I filled up 3 sketchbooks, which I've never done in my life. So I've been working on things, but I just kind of quit with making comics. Obviously I kept working on it, but I wasn't worried about publishing them.
Sure.
And so I just, like I said, I knew I wanted to start with something that was just me, that was small. And so the goal for The Song Survives is really small, because I also have the problem of I've had to move houses twice now, and I'm lugging comics with me that I printed that I have not been able to sell.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, I am going to print 20 to 25 copies of this thing. Or, I mean, however, if we get more backers than that, I'll print more than that. But like, I'm not going to be printing, you know, an extra 100. That's not the thing this time. It's really small. The goal is going to be $400, $500. And so, because that's all I'm not taking anything from this. It's just, this is what it's going to cost me to print it and ship it to people. That's end of the day. That's it. And so this was just the time. I didn't want to put it off for too long, because like I said, I do have a lot of other things I want to do. But I hope that this is kind of a stepping stone for me, at least personally, of being like, for one, to show myself, one, to show other people, hey, no, I did this thing. Because that's a big thing with crowdfunding, with Kickstarters, is that if you can show success, it helps to see other success. And I, at this point, have not had success on crowdfunding that is mine. All the success I've had on crowdfunding has been an anthology that has had, you know, 20 collaborators on, and all of them and their people and their audiences have all come together. And so I wanted one that's just me. And so, you know, that might backfire on me. We'll see. But I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that it's gonna go okay. But yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah. I think it's I think there's something to be said for like wanting to find that solo success of not just the like, you know, when you think about the numbers, like having 20 different collaborators, if each of those people tell their parents, right? Like, hey, I have this thing, and like their parents and their spouses, that's, now you've doubled that number. So now you've got 40 people that are backing it, like without even trying. And then if one of their readers does it, then suddenly you're 60. And like, it's really easy to find that when there's a bunch of people involved. So I think it's very commendable for you to be like, I want to find it with just my book, my writing, my art, my voice, my thing, my idea. Like, I think that's like super punk rock of you, and like very badass to do.
No, I that's something that I will say that I think that, at least in my experience and from what I've read, and not to say that like my parents don't support me, because they support me 100%, but like there is, especially for people who are outside of comics or outside of crowdfunding spaces in general, or creativity, don't quite like the appeal of like supporting your child or brother or cousin, whoever, family member, friend, whatever it is that makes things. It's like, okay, cool. Yeah, I'll help you make that first one. And then after that, it's like, okay, you need more money to make another one. Like, why haven't you, like, I thought you already did this. I thought this was your, like, and so, and like I said, and that's not to say that anyone doesn't support me, but like, it is still, it's hard to help make people understand that, which is why I'm trying to like, hopefully can branch out beyond just that circle of people, and to get other hands on it as well, other eyes on it. I don't know what else I was going to say, but I guess that's good. It must not have been important.
It'll probably come back to you later. It's totally fine. I mean, you mentioned it earlier too, though, of like, there's something like, there's an audience out there for everybody's style, and like not every style has to be for every fan or reader or whatever, which is a very common credo that I keep coming back to on the show of like, not everything has to be for everyone, and that's totally okay. Like, it'd be weird if everything was for everyone.
Yeah.
So like it's almost a healthier thing to do. So all right, so let's talk about The Song Survives. The campaign is in pre-launch currently, on the business side of things. It launches March 28th, and you said you've got a small goal set. Is it going to be a full 30-day campaign?
Yeah.
Okay.
Real quick, I did remember what I was going to say just off what you said about punk rock.
Perfect.
Is that it ties to something else, just another comic that I've done, Outlaw Country, which I'm not going to get into Outlaw Country right now, but I do feel like that is something that I've thought about a lot when making that book, is that that and like the punk rock thing and the indie comics thing, just the independent scene in general, is all about like people, at least the Outlaw Country scene, from what I understand, back in like the 70s and 60s, 70s, was like people that didn't want to keep that same Nashville sound and like this very like cookie cutter thing. And we're like, no, we're going to like be upfront about who we are. We're going to be like, no, and we're going to sing songs about Sunday morning coming down and stuff like that. Yeah. And be like, I'm going to dress all in black. I'm going to be this crooner. This is mindset of like, that I think is similar in indie comics and in all these other punk things that are just like, because I've been doing a lot of research into zines as well currently, and like trying to make those. And so I'm really liking that mindset of just like, make what you want, put it out there. Like, I'm like, as far as zines and stuff I'm wanting to do, I'm not making like any like actual like punk zines. It's mostly like mini comics, but still like my plan is to like just do the whole, like the old fashioned, like just drop it into like leave it on the table at a coffee shop, like drop it off, put it in the shelf at Barnes and Noble, that kind of thing. And so I just wanted to make that point, that just because you had mentioned it, that I do think a lot of those things kind of come together and have a very similar credo to them.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, when I started this show, I was like, I just want to talk to comic creators about comics and about music, because those are the two like core human traits that I have of like, I love comics and I love music. And I was very much into punk and pop punk and the DIY, and it was just kind of the like, you know what, like, I'm not going to wait for somebody's approval to start. Like, I'm just going to do the thing and make it, and I'm going to make it how I want it. And I'm not going to have to worry about answering to, like, I've done plenty of internet radio stuff. I've done plenty of broadcast radio stuff. And it's always like, well, you got to fit our format, or like, you got to do things a certain way, because like that fits our brand. Even like, it's totally yours, but like, you still need to fit us. And so it was always like, no, I don't want to fit you. I'm me. Let me be me. Let me do the thing that I want to do, how I want to do it. And so like, that's where this came from. But then as it's progressed, and now I'm nearing my 1 year mark, it's like the overlap of indie comics and punk rock is that DIY mindset. And like, it is super prevalent in both communities. And so like, it just, at this point, like, it's super fun hearing that come up naturally of the, like, I'm just going to do like, I love zines and I love the like underground. I've got a handful of them that were left in like college campus libraries when I was, studying and all that stuff. And I was like, the hell is this? And I would pick it up, and it said like in the back cover, like, if you're seeing this, like, keep it, share it, give it to somebody. We don't care. Like, we made it, and now it's out there. And I'm like, that's freaking cool. And like, that just stuck with me. Yeah. And now I'm like, I want to, like, my first comic, I want to print it at Staples and like fold the pages in half and staple it and do the exact same thing. Like, I'm going to leave it at coffee shops and leave it at Panera Bread. And like, I don't care. I just want to do that because there's something special about it.
Yeah, no, there definitely is. And I think that's kind of, like I said, I'm just doing like mini comics as far as, zines and things like that. But like the one I have almost done that'll be coming out with Song Survives, actually, a digital version at least. I might throw a physical one in, who knows? But it's just like a little witch who owns a coffee shop, and that's it. And it's just a cute little story. It's not super punk or anything, but I'm trying to still do a little bit of that mindset, and just be like, okay, I'm gonna, still find places where I think it'll fit and just leave it there and see who appreciates it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely a mindset I want to keep going with as I keep, going
It's
on
great.
this journey.
Yeah, for sure, dude. And like also it's worth mentioning like people that are like, oh, that's like, is this punk enough? Like the imposter syndrome thing.
Yeah.
Like there's no gatekeeping to punk. Like the whole point of punk is being authentically you.
Yeah.
And so like whatever that means for you, like
Very
do
true.
the thing. You know what I mean? Like a
Yeah.
witch owning a coffee shop. Hell yeah. Make the comic. Like
Yeah.
make it and create it and pass it out and leave it guerrilla style. Like that's so very punk. So yeah, like
Appreciate it.
yeah, just a quick like I will cheer
All
you
right.
on, man.
Thanks.
So all right, so the song survives is a sword fighting style western about like a traveling troubadour. Give me the like elevator pitch and like why you landed because it's tied into like an RPG idea you had. Yeah?
Yeah.
Or am I making that up? Okay.
Sort of. It's more. It's like it's a chicken and egg situation.
Okay.
In that I've already been getting into Dungeons and Dragons for a while, had never played, and then I'd happen to have this idea of a humble bard. He's traveling the desert, and he is living this life of travel and anonymity. And then he's faced with the decision to either continue that or go and, be a hero. And this isn't spoiling anything, but like the opening of the book is him singing a song about the heroes of legends past. And so when it came time, when I was invited by one of my fiance's friends' husbands to play this game, I needed a character. And so I was like, well, why not this guy? Like, I already know who he is. I have like, and that's the thing that I like to do when I'm making things is like, when I'm making comics is like, I like to know a lot about the characters. Like I like to know who they are, at least in my head. Not everything makes it to the page, but I like to at least know in my head who that person is, like what they're about. And this was a guy who loves stories, who loves who's spent his whole life hearing tales of heroes and things like that, and has just loved those stories. And now he gets the opportunity to potentially be that hero. And so I just thought that was really interesting without, spoiling anything. But yeah, and ever since then, obviously, since once you are actually in an RPG playing as a character, like obviously he's gone a different direction than the way the book is. Just because, just the nature of playing an RPG, you're role playing him and things happen, and it's obviously not structured in a story like the way that I had envisioned originally, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
But it is kind of funny being like when we play on Sundays, not today actually, but when we play on most Sundays, it's like, I don't know, it's just weird being like, okay, I'm in the book, he doesn't have a name. He's unnamed in the book. He's just in the script, it just says the bard, the bard, the bard, the bard. And he has a name that I didn't know when I wrote it. I didn't have a name in mind even. It was just, I needed a name eventually. I'm not going to say it. But I'm going to leave that up to people's imaginations. I like it better, at least for The Song Survives. I like him better being unnamed. I just think that adds a bit of mystery to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how he kind of came to be. And like I said, it was originally going to be this 4-part thing, and it was going to be just straight 16 pages, four sets of 4, and then I added a couple more. And so, it'll be fun.
That's cool.
That's where it came from.
Yeah, and it's a 22 page, right?
One shot? The actual the comic is 18 pages, but it's going to be printed. It'll be 22 because I'm going to put some concept art. I'm going to put some script pages, things like that in there.
Cool.
And yeah, then I'll have it digitally. I do have some other things that I've never offered for rewards. Not that I want to just be like, this is. I don't like when podcasts get into here's all the rewards we're offering. You know what I mean? Yeah. But like I'm offering a cameo in the book, which I've never done before. Okay. There's 4, which actually, shoot, I forgot about that. I need to upload that to the Kickstarter page right now because like I put it on Procreate. I added like blank circles where each of the heads will go for the people if you back at that tier. Doing that. I'm doing blank sketch covers. So that it's just I'm just doing things that I've never done before. I've never gotten the chance to do.
Yeah.
And partially in the past, just because I never thought like I was like, no one wants that from me. No one wants that from me. And this time I'm like, you know what? No, like I'm gonna do it.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is that makes it. I don't know what it is in my head that's like, no, that's for other people to do. That's not for you to do. That's for other people. That's for real artists to do. And so I'm like, no. That's not how that works. So I'm gonna do it. And
Nice.
so I am. Yes, that's the book.
Cool, dude. And so reading it like for me, having read all of the things that I've read and trying to be intentional of, I need to read more manga than just Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. Cause I've read all like that. That's foundational to like early young me of what character and world building and all of those things should be. But I definitely felt like I was reading like an action samurai manga reading this first book because of the very energetic like fight sequences and like just some of the movement that you've got created are just like they feel like they're jumping off the page, and it's and maybe it's because it's all like monochrome and it's like black and white. And like maybe that lent itself to my brain being like, oh, this feels very manga. And maybe it's because I've been reading manga like a lot this last month or so. But it just was like, oh no, this feels like a really badass like Western manga comic. And then I asked you and you were like, I didn't have that in my brain. And so like I almost like that even more because like that could be an audience that you never intended to be seeing of like, if you like action manga, like you're probably going to like The Song Survives. And so, but like, where did the inspirations for your style or the style of this book come from?
I definitely think you did bring up a good point that I think the grayscale of it and the halftones are doing a lot of that heavy lifting as far as giving it a very manga vibe. Which the grayscale, that's mostly just done out of the fact that I don't like to color. I'm not a good colorist and it's cheaper. And so
super fair.
But I mean, I didn't make that decision purely like monetarily. Like it's also just that it happens to be cheaper, but also I just think the book, I like working in black and white. I like working in grayscale, or at least like for Outlaw Country, it's still very monochrome. It's black, white, and blue. And so I just like, I like that look. I like when things have a very specific color palette to them. Not that this has a color palette at all, but that's a whole other topic. But no, the influences I think are the main influence for like the art that I wanted to do to follow was Daniel Warren Johnson, which he does do a lot of, you mentioned the speed lines and things like that. He does a lot of that really, really well. And so I had done a lot of reading into him. I wrote a whole newsletter about his work last year sometime near the end of the year. But it was I don't know where it is. Somewhere on my shelf there over there, I think. But Do a Powerbomb and Murder Falcon were the two things that really like turned me on to him like hardcore. And so the way that he just draws action, I think, was a big part of this book. And I will say there is a specific shot that I think you mentioned earlier that I'm not going to go into details about, but it's where he's coming over the top and there's the speed lines and things. That was, it's not traced or anything like that, but it definitely, I remember very vividly, I can't find it, but I remember on Pinterest, like looking up like action shots, manga, like, cause manga does have a lot of that look. And so I remember looking up, like trying to find reference images, and I found something that was really, that like was, that image was based off of.
Okay.
Was the inspiration for that particular panel. So maybe there is something to it, because that panel was referencing a manga. Like I said, I don't know what the manga was. I can't find it. I have tried so hard. I tried every possible combination of search words into Pinterest and Google Images to find that picture, and I can't. I didn't save it anywhere. I don't know what it is. But anyway, yeah, I just really wanted it to look very. I really wanted to just focus on the action a lot. That's why the book is relatively quiet.
Yeah.
Like there's not a lot of um, dialogue, not a lot of um, sound effects. There are some sound effects, but not a ton. It's just definitely a very quiet book that I just wanted the action to kind of do a lot of that heavy lifting.
Yeah.
Which I do think makes it a little bit better when we do near the end get to a bit of dialogue and you start to like, I don't know, it makes that dialogue more impactful when
Yeah.
there's so little of it that it doesn't get lost in all these other characters talking about all these things. It's like, nope, here's a conversation. We got a bunch of action. Here's a conversation. Here's a bunch of action. Book is over. And that's it.
Yeah, it's definitely not like a Jack Lee or Jack Kirby Stan Lee like
No.
early Fantastic Four of just like
No.
everything is words and
Yeah.
then like
Yeah, no, it's definitely the action and the bard are like taking up everything in this page. They're the ones at the focus of it 100%.
That's cool. That leans into the like crux of comics of like show don't tell.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, no, that's and for being an action comic, like
Mhm.
the action should be the priority instead of dialogue. Like I think there's something to be said of like knowing what it is and leaning into that thing. And
Yeah.
so like leaning into the action and making like really badass panels is exactly the point of the comic and
Yeah.
nailed it. So
I appreciate it. Also, there's not a lot to tell. I mean, you're talking about show don't tell. There's not a lot in this book. There's not a lot to tell. I think most of it's portrayed pretty well, considering there's not much voiceover to it. I know I've done silent things in the past, and there's been a few things where I'm like, does this make sense? Is this clear what's happening? But I feel like the story of The Song Survives is relatively linear, so it's pretty easy to follow, like to know what's going on, who's who in this book, who's the good guys, who's the bad guys. Sort of. Like I said, I'm not going to get into that, but you know.
Yeah, you got to leave some mystery, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Give people a reason to check out the Kickstarter, which is linked in this episode description, so you can sign up and be notified right away on March 28th when it launches. So how, like, we talked about anthologies, we talked about the solo work, we talked about foreign press. You also let's stay on comics, and then I'll get into the comics unscripted stuff.
Okay.
You posted on Blue Sky asking about like Kickstarter and if there's any real like substantial I don't want to say competition, but like counterparts of Kickstarter. I know you mentioned Zoop. I chimed in with Indiegogo. I know there are other ones out there, but I want to talk about that because like Eric Palicki's chimed in and was like, yeah, we also should probably talk about the impact that crowdfunding is having on the comics community. And I just thought it was a really interesting idea that, like, as somebody that's been funding Kickstarters for a long time, it's never something that I thought about. And so I'm wondering like what your take on it is, from like, or what your thoughts were when he replied. Because I know you responded to him, and then again, like I just invited myself in and was like, oh, what about this thing? But like,
no, that's the point of social media, is like for other people to chime in. So you're totally good. I started in 2021. I was just pulling it up right now. I've been looking at information for Kickstarter I started with Kickstarter and Zoop, I believe, or I think I started with just Kickstarter. And I was just looking to compare mine to like how much are other campaigns bringing in, how many backers are they having, how much is the average backer backing. And so I started that in 2021. Apparently I didn't include single issues. I'm looking right now. Anyway, and then the next year I did Kickstarter and I compared Zoop and I compared at the time Crowdfunder, which Crowdfunder, I don't even know if it's works anymore.
Right.
That was in 2023. In 2023, I just did Kickstarter and Zoop. And then I skipped last year apparently because I was in the middle of a funk, which we've already talked about. And this year I only did Kickstarter. And so I started, my first original post was just what I found, which all I do is I take 20 Kickstarter campaigns, some funded, some unfunded, I try to get a good mix of different types, some that are first issues, some that are series, some that are trades or anthologies, some that are single issues. I try to get some that are the Kickstarter NSFW books, but I don't make sure they're not all of that, because I think that those are they're valid if they are making your money, whatever, but they're not exactly the best metric to use, I think, because if you look at those, they're always making thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars with hundreds and hundreds of backers. Like, I'm looking at this right now. I can tell you, here's one with $31,000, 483 backers. Guarantee you that's an NSFW book.
It's insane.
Or it's at least one with a, you know the type of Kickstarter I'm talking about.
Yep.
And it's right there on Kickstarter. So the post that you're mentioning was me basically being like, do I even need to look at Zoop? Is it worth anything to look at Zoop? Because I've looked at Zoop most of the other years that I've done this. Is it worth comparing them at this point? Because every year when I was looking back, Zoop has, I think Zoop had, it's like they're doing less numbers, but like more per backer. But either way, they're doing their numbers were lower for Zoop. So I was like, I guess it was just, was it even necessary?
Yeah.
And I think that it's not, I decided no. And I say this as someone who has used Zoop in the past. I crowdfunded comics from the kitchen off Zoop.
Sure.
And Zoop were great people. But I think Zoop works really, really, really well if you have an established audience. If you have a big enough audience that you can bring them all over to Zoop, that works. If you're just your own person, like me, someone smaller, or someone who is just starting out, you need Kickstarter, because Kickstarter has a built-in network of not only the project we love, but like it's just easier for people to find other Kickstarters. Kickstarter is just a bigger name. I know that a lot of people were originally put off of Kickstarter back in 2021 or 2022 when they announced that they were doing blockchain stuff, which ended up amounting to nothing because everyone was announcing blockchain stuff at the time. But I don't really know if I've answered your question or not. But I think that Eric brought up a good point, and something I hadn't really thought about. Like, that is something that we should be talking about. Okay, I say we should be talking about it. I don't even think we need to be talking about it, because people are having success on Kickstarter.
Yeah,
that's not in doubt. People like I know what's his name? Travis Gibb, Pat Shand, Charlie Stickney, people like that are able to over and over and over and over again. John Westhoff's doing a great job too. He's not quite Charlie Stickney level, but like he's doing a great job too. He's a great friend. Been a big help to me. And so there's a lot of people that are making Kickstarters on a regular basis, making a lot of Kickstarters, launching a lot of books on Kickstarter, and it is working extremely well for them. If they're able to get what they want out of it, fine. That's all. That's the end of the day. I think that's the end of the story, honestly. If you're able to make the funds that you want to make on Kickstarter and make the comics that you want to make and be funded to make those comics, that's it. That's all that matters. I think that what Eric brought up is a good point, that there is not a lot of jumping off from Kickstarter onto other comics. I think that someone mentioned Scout. Scout did a really good job of this. I know Scout's had a lot of issues with their payments and things like that, but I know Scout did a really good job of taking things that were crowdfunded and publishing them in direct market. And I know that Massive, I don't know what exactly it is. I've seen the name Massive thrown around. They're working with Lunar to do a similar thing. So I'm going to be looking into that myself just to see how that goes, see if that's an option for me. But I don't really think that it matters. I think that, the biggest successes that we see on Kickstarter, I think, like the biggest Kickstarters, you mentioned Berserker with Keanu Reeves. Brandon Sanderson had something that was done on Kickstarter that did bukus of money. And I think those two things worked out so well because they previously had an audience that then came to Kickstarter. I don't think there's a lot of things that are starting out on Kickstarter and are able to port themselves into direct comics. I think the best outcome for someone is them being able to say, hey, I have a big audience on Kickstarter. Now hire me, boom, to make this book for you. Or Mad Cave. Yeah. Or I would have said Scout, but Vault, someone like that. And then that potentially turns into Marvel, DC, something like that, Image. Yeah. But I don't think there's a lot of people that are able to take a Kickstarter, just solely Kickstarter success, and able to turn that into direct market success, at least within the same book. It's not like you're seeing, I don't know, something, I can't think of anything off the top of my head on Kickstarter that's doing really good. The only example I can think of is Charlie Stickney's White Ash. But that started on Kickstarter, went to Scout, and then left Scout, and now it's back on Kickstarter. But again, that's a situation of where it started on Kickstarter, still only went to Scout, and then turned back. Not to say that Charlie, if he wanted to, couldn't turn it into I bet if Charlie wanted, he could find himself some kind of way to be making, if Big Two comics, direct market comics, if that was what he was interested in. But he left Scout for a reason. And I interviewed Charlie. I'm not going to talk about, his life or anything like that. I don't know anything about his life, for one thing. But I'm not going to talk about the details of that because I don't know them. Yeah. But I feel like that was a very long-winded answer to your question. I don't really know. I just I'm a big numbers person, is why this started. And I just wanted to see, I just wanted to see for the comic I was making at the time, Fletcher Cross. I was like, how is this what do I need? How many what should I be expecting? Yeah. And then after that, I was like, okay, well, let's see, how's it doing this year? Okay, how's it doing this year? Okay, and how's it doing now? And so kind of just looking to see, and I also just think it's because I've just looking at the numbers here, they're not it's not because we get a lot of people get very frustrated or concerned about the economy and things like that, and how that's going to affect things like this. And I'm not an economist. I'm not anyone who knows any jack about anything. So don't ask me. But I can say that just looking, and I also realize this data that I'm using is not scientific. I'm not looking at the best data in the world. I literally just click 20 Kickstarters that look to be, or 10 that look to be trades, 10 that look to be single issues, and average them all out on a Google sheet. That's all I do.
Okay. I was going to ask you, how did you dig into this?
I just opened 20 Kickstarters, and then like I said, I try to pick a good variety. Some are funded, some aren't. Some are the NSFW, some aren't. Some are multiple issue things. Some are first issues. Some are just one shots. And I just literally just put them all on a Google sheet, put insert function, average the whole column. Then we divide those two numbers together. And so my point is just that for anybody listening right now, or to this episode when it comes out, Kickstarter is doing a lot better than it was in 2023. Average number pledged is doubled what it was. I skipped last year, so we're going to forget that. But it's double what it was in 2023. People are averaging $14,000 on each campaign. I know most people are way under that. That's an average. That's also taking into account one that was at $106,000. So that definitely threw me out. Threw off the. You know what? If I was being more scientific about this, I probably shouldn't have included that because that's an outlier. So I'm probably going to go amend that. But I still would say that the numbers are doing better than they were a couple years ago. Backers, this is something that we can't argue. I mean, we can still because it's an outlier, but we're still the numbers. We have about average of 274 backers per campaign right now. That's on wild. Kickstarter. So I'm done now, I guess. I'm not going to say anything else because I don't really know what else to say. I feel like I've said everything I can about this topic. Unless you have any questions, I can try to answer them. But I'm by no means an expert. I just like numbers and like to look at stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm very much a I need to see it in front of me person. And so I've done data analysis, I've done all of crazy stupid Excel formulas and stuff like that. And reading that, I was part of why I wanted to talk to you was how did you even start to compile this? Because I feel like there's a bajillion projects on Kickstarter. And so because as someone who eventually would like to get into the game of publishing and making my own stuff and getting on Kickstarter, like I'm definitely, there's something to be said of the like, you got to stop reading about it and start making it and figuring it out for yourself. And like I struggle with that because I like just reading and reading and reading and reading and reading, but really that's just me procrastinating from like doing the thing. So, but like I do like having that baseline of information. I'd be curious with your book specifically being a one shot, being black and white, and being like an action Western. I wonder if there's anything like any other campaigns that you could look at. Like, would it even be worth looking at to see if there are other, like, if I were to make like a punk rock comic, right? And I search in Kickstarter like punk, and then, you know, series pop up that have been on Kickstarter that have that tagline or SEO or whatever as part of it. Like if I look at those and then look at their numbers and backer counts and stuff like that, like is that even worth me as a creator looking at? Or is it just setting, like, is that almost like a false prophecy type of thing? You know what I mean? Like, is looking at that actually going to be help? Or is that just like, oh, cool, I can expect to have like 274 backers because average, that's what they had. And I can set a goal of $1,000 and I should be able to smash through that and get to 7,000 because the average on those was 14,000. So like,
it's absolutely not. This is not a good thing to use to determine how your Kickstarter is going to do or what you should aim for. Like I said, for me, this originally started as just, I think when I originally did it, I want to say like I even had like by like I want to say at some point I was looking at like page numbers just to know like how much is a book, like how much should I be asking for? Was originally like my first thing. It was just, it wasn't like the original reason for this wasn't, from what I remember, wasn't to see how much I should be shooting for. It's more how much should I be asking for? And then I do think this part is actually might be helpful, is the looking at the average amount per backer, which I think kind of tells you, hey, this is about what people are willing to spend on a campaign. That might be somewhat useful information. I don't know that it is. I would not take my, if you wanted to you right now wanted tomorrow to launch your Kickstarter, do not use this. Do not use my information as anything. If anything, it's kind of just I use it more for myself at this point as kind of a metric of how healthy is it. You know what I mean? Or at least how healthy does it look? And it seems like it's not doing bad. And if nothing else, it's just a way for me to feel slightly better because I get very drowned in the world is ending. Everything is terrible. Life sucks. And so this is like, well, Kickstarter's not doing so bad. So, I mean, maybe like,
maybe you know, things aren't all awful, right?
Exactly. Yeah. That's all this is for me at this point. So not a scientific metric by any means.
No, I mean, that's super good framing and context to have. Because like I said, I was just really like, it's something I've never thought of. And so reading that and then reading Eric's reply and like thinking about that too, I was like, well, like it kind of comes down to how do you measure success and like what do you see as a win versus like impactful for the community? And like I started getting into all these like big brain questions. I was like, I don't have any of these answers. So maybe I just shouldn't like try and dive into it because I'm grossly underprepared for that.
It's not worth diving into any more than I do. I don't think. I mean, if someone really I'm pretty sure that their Kickstarter puts out better numbers than I am able to find, or that I'm able to better numbers than what I have. Right. This is like I said, and I make sure to say that every single time I've posted about this on Twitter, Blue Sky, whatever, this is super anecdotal. It's not a good number. I'd be more interested in like, and I know this number is out there somewhere, but like how many are funded versus aren't funded, things like that. But I do this I do make sure to do it about the same time every year. So it's not like, because I know that time of year you launched has a big factor on how things fund. And so I make sure to do it about the same time. So I'm like, okay, well, at least I'm getting somewhat scientific. So, you know, it's somewhat accurate. Not really, but it makes me feel better.
Right. It's better than looking at like March one year and like
Yeah.
that dead time between Thanksgiving and Christmas another
Yeah.
year. And
Mhm.
yeah, for sure. So no, I just think it's an interesting conversation to have.
Mhm.
So speaking of interesting conversations, did you feel that pivot just now?
Yeah. I like
You
it.
you used to host, and I say used to because I in looking I couldn't find any newer
No.
episodes of Comics Unscripted. So I guess first, like, is that a thing that you did for a time and we're just like, I don't, the ROI for like the energy you're putting into it, because it does take a lot to produce these things.
Mhm.
Like, so I'm curious, like, is that a thing that's going to be coming back? Was it a fun thing to do at the time and you did the thing and now you're focusing on comics instead? Like, where are you at with all of that?
It started just because I wanted to make a comic podcast, but it I pulled up the numbers, and like I feel like at first I was like doing pretty good. Like I had a decent amount, doing a decent amount of streams on each episode, nothing crazy, but like, 15 to 20 on each
Yeah.
one on average, right?
Yep.
And then all of a sudden it dropped to, and this is my conspiracy brain. I think it might have happened around the time where like all the podcasts got moved over to Spotify instead of Anchor. I
Yeah.
don't know if that's accurate at all. That's completely hearsay. But anyway, I just noticed that like I just wasn't getting any streams on any of them, and like it dropped to consistently like single digits.
Mm.
And it just wasn't. And I say this, and I don't like saying this on a podcast because I feel like it sounds discouraging. I just got tired of talking to the same people and asking the same questions. It felt like
Mm.
every single time.
Yeah.
And I tried really hard, and I think I did a pretty good job of asking interesting questions. I tried to, at least. I tried to ask, because I would listen to other podcasts that people had been on and look them up and see like what they'd talked about before and try to, find other angles and other things like that. But
Yeah.
for me, I think it was just like you said, just a lack of a ROI. I just was like, I'm not, and I don't just mean financial ROI. I also just
Sure.
mean like personal fun enjoyment
Yeah.
ROI. Like I just wasn't getting enough out of it to every other week be recording a podcast with another person making a Kickstarter. And then I was just like, it just wasn't for me. But
Yeah.
I think that's another big thing. If I had been able to figure out how to make that jump into, and this, I think I can say this because I am one of the people I'm talking about, is if I could have made the jump to what I felt were like more legitimate guests. You know what I mean? If I could have
Mm.
jumped to like having Tom King or Daniel Warren Johnson, people like that worked for the big two, if
Yeah.
I had been able to get there before if I'd been able to keep my own enjoyment of it,
Yeah.
my enjoyment of it fell before I was able to get to a point that I feel like I would have enjoyed. But that also might not be true. That might just be me wishful thinking, because we do that a lot as people. We think that like, oh, it'll be better if I get to this point. It'll be better if I get to this point.
Yeah.
But I do feel like it would have been a little bit better because there were a lot of questions I wanted to ask people. And like I had, just like I had lists of like dream guests and dream questions, and I asked them, but it just quickly became too much work, and I lost. I don't know I can't remember the phrase, but like I lost sight of the ball, I guess. That's not what I'm looking for, but it became less about, it just became it just wasn't fun, and I wasn't able to put that effort.
Yeah.
I wanted to put that effort into making comics, because
Yeah.
around the time that I stopped doing Comics Unscripted is about the same time that right after I'd had Smash and Sussex both bomb on Kickstarter. Which, everybody was in those has since gone on to do great things. Like Devin with Smash just had his Lion of Olympus funded, I believe. I know Nick just had Sussex funded. If anybody hasn't gotten on Sussex yet, go back that right now. It's great. I've seen the first issue. It's stunning. It's amazing. Alvaro Molina is the artist. He's great.
Yeah. It's a great looking book.
It's trust me, it is. I've seen the insides of it. It's awesome. But yeah, after all that, I was just like, I'm not, and like I said, that kind of coincided with me wanting to build a publisher. And I was like, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to make comics. That's what I want to do. I want to make things. Like, and kind of to tie it all back into the beginning of the episode, I was like, I always knew I wanted to make something. And I was like, interviewing people is not the way that I want to make things. But I know that like there are people who that's the way that they explore the thing that they love. Like I know that I interviewed David Harper, who does Off Panel, and I know he said it on his own podcast. Like basically what I just said, like he gets more enjoyment out of, that's the way he explores his enjoyment of comics, is by talking to the people who make them. Yeah. He just doesn't have the mindset or whatever to, and that sounds like I'm saying like a hustle mindset. Not that he doesn't have that, because that man is hustling, interviewing so many people, great people, doing great interviews. Yeah. But you know what I mean though? Like he doesn't have the creative mindset. So just the same way I don't have that, like I want to interview people all the time mindset. I would rather spend that effort making something. Yeah. And I feel really bad because I'm not trying to diminish what you're doing by any means, because you're doing a great job. You're like actively participating and like being a part of the community, and that's great. And but this wasn't what I wanted to do. If I was going to be a part of the community, it's because I wanted to share what I had drawn and made myself. Yeah. And like they're two very differing skill sets too. Right. And like, and that's the whole thing of, even just as like not everything has to be for everyone, like not all people have to have the same skill sets to contribute to the like larger indie comics or comics community in general. And so like, I was just curious, as someone who's doing it and who I overthink everything, and I'm already like, okay, so I'm coming up on a year, like what's my sustainability with the show? Like I'm all about figuring out sustainability. And like, how do I stay energized? How do I stay? Because I've had 7 internet radio shows over the last 15 years, and they all have fizzled out for one reason or another. Some of them were like, no one's listening, so why am I even bothering? And some of them were like, I want to do my thing. Like, stop limiting me and putting restrictions on me. And so like, that was very intentional from the start. And, so just trying to, especially now that I'm starting to have repeat guests come back with like new books or come back as a team, thinking about like, how do I keep this interesting without having the same conversation? Because we've like, I've talked to these people before, and I don't want to have the same conversation. So constantly thinking about it that way. And like, honestly, just having a candid conversation with my wife of like, listen, I love doing this show. Like I want to treat this like a part-time job, even though I'm never going to get paid for this. Yeah. Because like, if I don't give it that intentional time, I know I'm going to get burnt out. I'm going to like just always feel behind. It's always going to be a stress. And I don't want to feel that. I'm not yet, which is great, because like, even coming up, I'll hit a year on the 31st. Like that's the marker of my first published episode with Jay Donahue. So I'm like, okay, so coming up on a year, like, how am I feeling? And I'm just starting to do those temp check things. And it's like, no, this is still like, I started this to just have conversations with people. Yeah. I'm the like Tony Stark with the arc reactor. Like, I just want to blow it up and look at each individual piece of somebody's process, because that to me is like, it's just fascinating how different and wildly unique perspectives come into all creating the same thing that we all love of comics. Right. And so like, just seeing those differences is always fascinating to me, and how people approach it and all of those things. So, but like, I did want to mention too, like you had Travis B. Hill on the show. And I don't get, it's not often that I get to shout him out, because I talked to him, like he was actually one of the influential people that I talked to at like a tiny little convention in Northern Kentucky, that was like, dude, if you've got stories, like write them down. And he was one of 2 people that day that like, I left that convention, like, okay, oh my gosh, I'm going to write comics. Like, why not me? And like, he's one of the reasons why I started writing anything. So I love seeing that. You had plenty of post-punks on your show as well. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Band of Bards. They were on your show. Mad love to them as well. Like
it was like, man, you had a ton of like, I feel like I'm kind of picking up some of what you were doing with talking to the Kickstarter people and doing
Yeah.
the thing. And so
Well,
it's just like talking to like-minded people is always it like it's just a
mhm.
win.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's the thing that I do miss about it is just like being able to talk to people who and just learning from people. But two things that I did want to say. You mentioned not making money. I think for me that was a big thing that kind of turned me off of it.
Mm,
Was like I mentioned before, Kickstarter or not Kickstarter, sorry, the podcast. Spotify brought Anchor.fm,
yep.
and at some point, Spotify changed it to where you could no longer put in an automatic ad for Anchor and make 1 cent per episode.
Yep.
And you're not allowed to withdraw the money till you get to $10. And
Right.
so for me, I was like, I kept seeing that number crawl up. I was like, all right, we're getting to 8. We got to $8 now. All right. And then Spotify took that away. And I know it was only $8, but like I think that 1 cent per episode was really driving me. And
Yeah.
once it got taken away, I was like, I don't have the motivation for this. It was only a cent, but still, I think that just seeing that number go up made my little monkey brain be like, yes, that's good. We want that number to go higher. And
Yeah.
then it stopped. But
Endorphins. See,
exactly.
do you remember? Like, I remember. I can tell you exactly what my number was when they switched because I also had I was doing like a radio show format
Yeah.
thing on Anchor, but I topped out at $4.56, and I was like, that's money that I earned with my show, and
Mhm.
I'm never gonna see it.
I just looked it up. $7.78
Like I
out of
just
60 episodes.
yeah, and like it feels saying $4.56.
Yeah.
Like I've spent $5 on I've basically just thrown that money away on stupid
Yeah.
stuff. But like that's money that I earned that I'm never gonna see. And it was definitely discouraging when that switch happened because then it got suddenly like, oh, well, you have to have this and this and this. And
Yeah.
if you do that plus jump on your left foot 7 times per episode, then maybe we'll consider putting you in a queue to get you monetized. But
Yeah.
until you do all that stuff, that's like YouTube. Like it's just never gonna monetize.
No. Yeah.
Of course, anybody that starts a show is like, oh, it'd be great to make money doing this. And
Mhm.
if it takes off and blows up, it goes viral and I get all this money and sponsorships and blah. And then you get into it and it's like, I'm never gonna get like
Yeah.
2% of all podcasters actually get
I,
paid. And like
yeah.
one of them is Pat McAfee. Like, okay.
Well, yeah. Well, the other thing I saw did make me feel good was like only like 10% of podcasts made get past like 10 episodes or something.
Yeah.
Like it's so that made me feel good. But yeah, I'm looking at it, it's like 2,000 people in the last 30 days have to stream it, 10,000 hours. It got to a lot. And like even if I had been able to just see that number go up, I don't even think it would have mattered how much I was at.
Yeah.
But just seeing it go up would have made me feel a lot better. But you did ask if I was going to like what the plan was for it, and I don't have a plan for it. But
Fair.
I did interview for, I think it's mostly kind of going to be merged with my newsletter, which isn't regular by any means, but I plan to like do interviews through that every once in a while.
Okay.
Like I'm thinking right now, I have someone I'm planning on reaching out to about coming on and doing an interview. I did my best of 2024 with Ben Humanek. That was the second time we've done an end of year episode. And so I hope to have him come back next year. I just didn't put them on the Comics Unscripted feed. They were in Google Drive, and I sent that out to my newsletter. And so that's kind of the plan for now, is to put it through there. And that's where I'm doing a lot of things. Like I've sent out free comics digitally to my newsletter subscribers. I've given away discounts for books in my online store, which I'm hoping to expand sometime this year with just some other art things that I've been working on. But yeah, I don't plan to do the podcast, but I'm like on Comics Unscripted.
Yeah.
I think I still did call it Comics Unscripted, but just because that's what I'm used to.
Sure.
I just the intro. But anyway, yeah, I use the same music for it and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to answer that, I just wanted to answer that question. I do plan to still do interviews, but definitely less. I was doing them every 2 weeks. I don't even plan to do that much. So. maybe
you
once more.
mentioned your newsletter. How do people get in touch with your newsletter?
Formpresscomics.com/subscribe, or you can just go to formpresscomics.com, and I think it's still there at the bottom of the page. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know what state my website is in because I tried to change it once or twice and I don't remember where I ended up leaving it. So yeah, if you just go to formpresscomics.com and scroll down, it's right there. It says subscribe. You just put in your email address, name, first name, last name.
Cool.
All right there. That's where I put like the first people to hear about Song Survives. Like they got the first 4 pages of it early, stuff like that. Just little tidbits here and there. What I can give, I will.
Yeah,
I want to.
And where, like, what social media are you most prominent on that people would find you?
Blue Sky and Instagram are my main 2 at the moment. Instagram's where I've been posting all of my sketchbook pages that I do, which I am not my belief with sketchbooks is that it's a sketchbook. It's not there just to publish the good things, because every YouTube video I've watched that's a sketchbook tour is like all these intricately drawn things. I'm like, no, my sketchbook has like a bunch of pages that are just like blotted with ink that bled through from the other side, or that I had to turn into like just figure drawings. And so like, that are just like 30-second figure drawings. So it's not like it's that great, but I mean, every once in a while I do something cool. That's where I did Moon Knight. That's where I did Ninjak. That's where I did stuff like that. But just Instagram and then Blue Sky. I'm trying to be more active on there. Right now it's mostly just me posting about the Kickstarter, but
sure,
hopefully it'll come back around.
Cool. Let me write a note for myself. I want to add website. I've got your Instagram and Blue Sky in the description, as well as the Kickstarter pre-launch page. So it's super easy for people to find that. Tap the follow so that you get notified when it launches on the 28th. It feels like we're wrapping up because we are, but I have 2 things for you. The first one is I'm going to take a screenshot and then use that as our YouTube thumbnail, mainly because it makes my life easier, but also because then you get to pose and look how you want to look. So, all right, get my keyboard shortcut. We'll pose and we'll go 3, 2, 1. Perfect. The other thing I like doing is, and I kind of already mentioned it, like I love talking to people because everybody's got different backgrounds, different experiences, different knowledge, different insights, different reasons why they got into making comics. And so part of why I love doing this is to just elevate and give you a spot to share your voice. So I'm going to stop talking and I'm turning the floor over to you so that if there's anything you want people to hear from you, it could be about The Song Survives. It could be about why Ninjak is the coolest freaking valiant superhero ever. The content doesn't matter to me so much as I just want you to have a chance to share whatever it is that you want people to hear directly from you. So the floor is yours.
First of all, go follow The Song Survives. It's a sword western about a humble bard who travels the desert until he is dragged into potentially saving a town. He must decide between a life of anonymity or a life of honor. But it's really cool. It's a one-shot comic. I'm incredibly proud of it. I love what's happened with it. And the only other thing I want to say is I don't know, be kind to people, be nice to people. I don't know, like I teach for my day job, and I think that's kind of the big thing that I tell students all the time. It's like, just be nice. Like, why you got to be, like, just be nice to people, and to go along with that, just just always, just help people out. That's why I started the podcast, is because I wanted to be a resource for people. And like, I like to carry that over to like, I think that kind of started with my day job. Obviously, like, I'm an educator. And so then it just kind of became like what I want to do in comics. And like, I have a little zine that's like how to make a comic book. I should put that out. I don't know why I don't go put that places. I have way too many of those. I'm going to go do that now. But yeah, just so I made that just to tell people, just to help people out. Just be kind, be a resource for people, help people out. That's all I got to say. And like, you mentioned at the beginning, the always forward, always. I stole that from Luke Cage. Love that show. But yeah, I guess I always put that at the end of my newsletter. I always put either forward, always, or I put peace and love. And those are 2. They're pretty generic things, but at the end of the day, that's kind of how I would like to live my life. And I guess that's all I have to say.
Nice. Yeah, and I would say with the peace and love thing, like it might feel simple to say that, but that like if the simple things were easy, everybody would do them. And it's
Yeah.
not, because like clearly there's
Yeah.
not enough peace or love going on
For
currently.
sure.
So I love all of that. Kylar, dude, thanks so much for hanging out with me, sharing your brain, sharing your story, sharing just all of the things that you shared. I really enjoyed this conversation with you. Hang tight after I end this. I got logistics
Okay.
for you. But for anybody else that is watching and or listening to this, I'm terrible at saying it, so like share this with your networks and do the YouTube thing and comment what learning that you had. I don't know. I don't do the YouTube shit. Like that's
No.
not me. Like if
No,
you
I
liked
didn't like
it,
that either.
share it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like if subscribe, maybe whatever. Find me at Longbox Punk Threads. Instagram and Blue Sky is where you can find me. It's all in the description below. You can buy a Longbox Punk shirt if you want to. I got a merch link down there as well. But that's enough self-promotion. I don't like doing any of that. I'm not a salesman.
No.
So thanks for tuning in, though, for hanging out on a Sunday afternoon or whenever you're listening to this. I hope you're having a good whatever it is for you. And go do what's good for you, punks, and read some indie comics, because we are out of here.
Bye.